to Dellasaurus ASMR Part 2. Just kidding. April Fool's Day is over.
The wacky world of MultimediaJay.
So now that this thing is running semi-normally again, now that it's been plugged back in, has a fresh CMOS battery, and the BIOS settings are set back to what they're supposed to be, I basically have been playing some catch-up as to what exactly I was doing with this computer around the time that I just left it unplugged for most of the winter. And that's when it jogged my memory. The last time I did anything significant with this computer, I actually had just upgraded Monolith's main SSD to a Samsung, so I was redistributing all the SSDs so that the best computers got the biggest ones. So, upgrade the best computers first and stuff like that. And that's when it occurred to me that this machine may not be working because that's not actually the Dellasaurus's SSD. It might have some other computer's operating system and thus won't start. So we're going to redo all of this from scratch with Gparted. I've got Gparted, and I'm going to make a Windows 10 thumbstick. And then we'll redo all of this from scratch and set this machine back up. Because for all the secondary systems and whatnot that aren't my main system, other than data storage, the OSs these days are pretty much disposable at this point. We're far removed from the days when recreating a computer from scratch or redoing a computer from scratch required hours upon hours of time and a mountain of CDs. So, let's get some thumbsticks ready to get Windows 10 back on this thing, regardless of whether or not that's the right SSD. We'll just wipe it all out and set it all back up again. But first, safety first, the actual games drive / data drive is unplugged, both on data and on power. We only want to nuke this thing. I was right, I didn't recognize the partitions at all. Yeah, this definitely came out of another computer. Well, letting the computer sit on the floor for a couple of months with the wrong drive in it, yeah, that'll definitely make it not work correctly. What also won't make it work correctly is, oops. One thing I forgot to set in the BIOS when I put the new battery in. Although the way I run this computer, I think running in UEFI mode probably is a viable option at this point. One, two, three, four. Let's try UEFI mode. Finally! Something resembling progress! And a blinky drive that unfortunately is going to be stuck at USB 2 speeds. So this is where the more keen-eyed are going to be like, hey, well, maybe the boot mode was wrong. Yeah, and the dead battery caused the SSD to not boot correctly because it wasn't in UEFI mode. Well, this thing has sat around for so long. I mean, this thing has sat around for so long that I might as well just install fresh and get a few updates to bring it up to speed instead of tying up, the download bandwidth with 6 months of updates and stuff. Plus deciding what apps I wanted, what apps I didn't want. I run different programs on all these computers nowadays to keep things simpler and make recovery a lot easier. So it was due for some spring reformatting as opposed to spring cleaning. Alright, we're stuck at USB 2 speed, so this'll take a while. This just gets easier and easier every single time that I do this. So the computer is back to running Windows 10 again. Just got to see if I can avoid downloading games if possible with what was left on the games drive. A little bit of some grease spots here and there. And it detected the games drive, that's back up and running. I also went over this. The reason why this machine's a lot shinier is because I went over it with some sewing machine oil for the metal parts. Not really necessary, you gotta wipe off the excess and whatnot, but a minor coating of oil to protect against oxidation and shine things up a bit to the point where the camera can barely stay focused on it. I suppose that's not such a bad thing. Of course, the computer is plastic as well, and that doesn't work as well. And that doesn't work on the plastic pieces, but whatever, might as well. I'm not going full on Grease Monkey with this thing. But we are back in business. There. Just gotta set Steam back up. It's already grabbing some of my settings from the cloud in terms of syncing things back up, but we are back in business with this thing. This just gets easier and easier as more and more stuff is moved to where broadband can solve it instead of having to go around through a mountain of CDs. And just out of curiosity, with the results from the Android x86 experiment with Rubbish, here's the old 2016 tablet and how this thing does in Geekbench. 358, 884. So, similar multi-core score, but weaker single-core score. It's also a quad-core processor, but it's still an Intel Atom. Both of the Snapdragons that I have are better than this. Let me grab the weakest Snapdragon phone for comparison, the LG Phoenix 3. Picked it up on clearance just to see what I could do with a $30 smartphone. 387996, inching closer on the single core, but yeah, the multi-core thing with quad-core versus dual-core, that definitely matters. Speaking of rubbish, since Android x86 was such an embarrassment, let's go back to Windows 10 and try one more thing. Though I think I'm really just kicking against the bricks by continuing to do this. Progress. Though I think this is going to be a waste of time too. This is rubbish that we're dealing with. And just like that, it is now the next day. Soon to be the day after. Yeah, 11 something at night. So yeah, so I've had some time to think about this while playing a bunch of ESO. What I think I want to do with this netbook is let's give it one last try with Windows 10. Because one of the things that I could do with Windows 10 is use this terrible excuse for a netbook to, well, netbooks are terrible excuses of computers to begin with, but use this netbook as kind of a test to see how low you can go with Windows 10. Because especially with no Windows Phone anymore, Microsoft's ability to put Windows 10 on everything under the sun is going to be challenged more than ever. So I'm curious, how low can you go? I bet any money, if it wasn't dual-core, this thing would probably have performance in line with the original Silver Bullet, with its Athlon XP 2000 all those years ago. So once this CPU thing falls below 100%, I'm actually going to try to do something with this thing. By the way, this is with an SSD. Maybe this thing would be better off not getting throttled so much if it had a regular hard drive. It's been a couple of minutes now, and we are still slammed to heck at 100%, even though it's turboing at 1.2 gigahertz. Come on, dual core, do something. And what we see here, of course, with all this stuff, maybe there's more Windows updates downloading, I don't know. But this is actually one of the disadvantages of netbooks versus real mobile devices. Because real mobile devices don't have this first boot nonsense, because you just run them all the time. You just restart them once in a while. So, I mean, unless there's people out there who actually shut down their phone and then start it back up when they go to sleep and then get up, kind of like a computer. But I don't know. It's just the way things are designed and the battery life and the low power draw when charging. It's just pretty much in stone right now that today's mobile devices can just run all the time and occasionally be restarted, as opposed to these so-called real computers. A sign of hope. A couple of instances where the processor utilization dropped to 95%-ish. The early days of AMD APUs, baby. Okay, rubbish, are you finally gonna behave yourself? Oh man, spoke too soon. Or maybe not. Either way, it's not slammed 100% all the time anymore, so let's actually try something. Oh no, he didn't. Oh yeah? Watch me. Target numbers are 500 single-core, 800 multi-core. How is it in Windows natively versus Android x86? Well, there we go. The cost of emulation, or just the fact that the Android x86 project tries to get Android running on the x86 architecture as opposed to ARM. 664 and 1079. Cool. Well, let's keep on keeping on with this thing as a Windows machine then. Because Android x86, well, it's a bit of a gimmick as far as I'm concerned. So, cool, even rubbish can step up to the plate from time to time. Alright, let's try the aftermath one more time. Also worth noting, by the way, Windows 10 has a native license on rubbish. So, well, let's just play this and see if it lags. A little. All good things must come to an end. Even my lack of tech videos. Wait, that was a good thing? Whatever. The wacky world of MultimediaJay. So it still stutters and it still struggles. Wintertime Rebel season. So it still struggles. It still struggles and it still stutters. But the performance is a bit better in native Windows than Android x86. So I think the concentrated coolness of rubbish. I was on the right track when I said that the concentrated coolness of rubbish should be that what I should do with it is see just how low you can go with Windows 10. So how can I make, turn off background processes and other assorted stuff to make rubbish actually able to handle this OS? There's one more curiosity, though, that people are going to be asking questions about when it comes to this computer, so let's answer it. So some people talk about using old computers as routers to replace routers themselves. There's one major problem with that. There's the Netgear humming away, not having any issues with capacity, running DDWRT and muscling all the network needs of my computers, including uploads and downloads at the same time, with no issues whatsoever, and it's drawing just under 5 watts. The netbook does 20. There's the answer on that right there. What's the pink thing? Oh, it's a souvenir that I have something at all to do with the 80s. Got it from grandparents long time ago. There's pennies in that thing from when I was a baby. So that kind of speaks to the state of pennies and just how useless they are. But it's great for keeping the kilowatt wire from tumbling off the bookcase. So that ends the whole matter with rubbish. I'm going to upgrade it to a proper member of the computer family a little later on. Just been having too much fun playing ESO. Yeah, so we'll find guides and stuff for shutting off background processes and other ways to try and make this viable in whatever way is possible, with considering the limits of the processor. Probably fixing all the background processes will help this thing run a little better. Now, there's one more curiosity of mine that I need to check out before I can call it with this upload. Tuxedo. How much does this effing thing still work? Enough to make the lights dim. What kind of RAM? Should be 8 gigs. I'm getting to the point where I want to compare 8 gigs to 16 gigs to see what happens when you don't have enough RAM. So this can be the 8 gig machine. We can see if we start getting serious performance hits in games and the like. Half of it. Well, that'll be all for Tuxedo then. I really don't feel like fiddling with the RAM just to get this thing actually working properly. Well, the unfortunate truth of the matter is that Tuxedo's RAM debacle isn't a really high priority thing for me to fix anytime soon. Because who needs to mess around with a system like that when you can just fire up something like this? Till next time, this is MultimediaJay, signing off. Thanks for stopping by.